Hello students, welcome to this program titled Adolescence, Psychophysical Characteristics. The objectives set for the present session are to study the adolescence as a developmental stage, to understand the adolescence from different perspectives, to understand different phases of adolescence, to be familiar with different developmental aspects of adolescence. First, we will discuss adolescence as a developmental stage. Adolescence is a period of rapid physical growth. The endocrine glands become quite active and secrete hormones that contribute towards growth of body structure. Adolescence is characterized by pubertal changes resulting in emergence of secondary sex characteristics. Here one's physique accepts a masculine or feminine role, whichever the case may be. Adolescence is a period of expansion of one's mental capacity. Intelligence reaches its climax during this period. Intellectual powers like logical thinking, abstract reasoning, etc. are almost developed up to the end of this period. An adolescent learns to reason and seeks answers to how and why of everything scientifically. Power of critical thinking and observation is much developed. Vocational awareness sets in. An adolescent is given to daydreaming and fantasy. This fantasy is quite different from that of earlier stages. Perhaps it helps the adolescent to develop some aspirations in life. An adolescent tends to suffer from swinging moods and emotional instability. He oscillates from extreme optimism to absolute dependency. There is a tendency to hero worship at this stage. They adopt the hairstyles, mannerism in speech and dress of matinee idols to enhance their social image. Now we will discuss perspectives or different definitions of adolescence. First, etymological perspective. The term adolescence comes from Latin word adolescere, which means to grow or to grow to maturity. Second, biological perspective. From biological point of view, adolescence is the stage when puberty dawns. Third, chronological perspective. Chronologically, this is a span of life ranging from 12 to 19 years with individual and cultural differences. Fourth, sociological perspective. Sociologically, adolescence is a transitional period from dependence on parents to self-sufficient adulthood. Psychological perspective. Psychologically, adolescence is a marginal situation which involves psychological disturbances and problems of adjustment. It differentiates the childhood behavior from adulthood behavior. Two theories have been put forward by the psychoanalyst school of thinkers to explain development during adolescence. First, theory of saltatory development. Second, theory of gradual development. First, theory of saltatory development. This theory has been propounded by G. Stanley Hall, a famous psychologist. He made an intensive study on nature of adolescence and described its characteristics in details. According to Hall, the physical, psychological and emotional changes take place at a very rapid speed. In his book Adolescence, 1904, he described the period of adolescence as a period of great stress and strain, storm and strife. It is the period of new learning and self-assertion. It is the period when new interests in adult life and in vocations develop. Theory of gradual development. Famous psychologists like Thorndike, Kin and Hollingworth are of the opinion that the physical, psychological and emotional changes that take place in adolescence are not sudden but are gradual. The late childhood and adolescence are interlinked, and in late childhood, the symptoms of adolescence start themselves. Technically, adolescence is the period from beginning of puberty to the completion of physical growth. The events of puberty mark the transition from child to adult. These events are triggered by a signal from the region of brain known as hypothalamus. The signal stimulates the pituitary gland, which sends extra growth hormones throughout the body. Also, there is a shift in the balance of sex-linked hormones in boys and girls. During childhood, boys and girls produce small, roughly equal amount of androgen and estrogen. Suddenly, boys have high level of androgens, girls have high levels of estrogens, and a dramatic sex difference in body development begins. However, the exact age spanned by adolescence vary from one person to next. Moreover, the psychological impact of transition to adolescence may differ across the individuals and perhaps even across cultures. Adolescence is the period of transition from childhood to adulthood. It's the most sensitive period of an individual's life. It's the period of rapid evolutionary change in the individual's physical, mental, moral, spiritual, sexual, and social outlook. It's generally thought to begin with the onset of puberty and is termed as the period of learning and development. It's also known as the period of anxieties and complexity. Except in rare cases of severe biological abnormality, boys and girls achieve sexual maturity early in adolescence and physical maturity by the end of it. Even of these invariable processes of maturation is independent of personal control. Adolescence is a process rather than a period, a process of achieving the attitudes and beliefs. A phase in the lifespan, the essence of which is characterized as transitional, owing to sudden increase in the activity of adrenal glands and hormones. A stage reflecting development of secondary sexual characteristics, self-identity and sex drive. A period of changing relationship with parents, peer group and opposite sex. The incidents of this period greatly affect the whole personality of individual. That's why it has been called the most crucial period. According to WHO 1977, adolescence is the progression from appearance of secondary sex characteristics, that's puberty, to reproductive maturity, development of adult mental processes and adult identity, and transition from total socio-economic dependence to relative independence. According to Big and Haunt, the one word which best characterizes adolescence is change. The change is physiological, sociological and psychological. Now we'll discuss phases of adolescence. First, early adolescence. The age approximation of this period is from 11 to 13 years. This phase of development is considered the early adolescence or pre-adolescence period. The spurt in physical growth during the pre-adolescence period is both sudden and distinct. During this phase, adolescents experience a period of rapid social development. An increase in their own sexual development gathers momentum. They strive to move with peers. In early adolescence, development mainly centralizes around the self-image as a result of psychological change. Second, mid-adolescence. The age approximation of this subperiod is from 14 to 15. This phase of adolescence is most recognized phase for the development of physical, emotional and intellectual capacities. The secondary sexual characteristics continue to develop, and at this time there appears a sense of self-dependence by the feeling of responsibilities among them. The cultural transition and transformation takes place with the emotional influence. Third, later adolescence. The age approximation, that's from 16 to 19 years. In this phase of growth and development, adolescents have more or less a suitable sense of their own identity and place in society. The secondary sexual characteristics are well developed. Adolescents at this time are able to define life goals, although Economic dependence on parents may continue. They are concerned with the preparation for the future and survival in the present scenario. Now we will discuss psychophysical characteristics of this stage. First, physical aspect. The beginning of adolescence is signed by a sudden increase in the rate of physical growth. While this growth spurts occurs for both the sexes, it starts earlier for girls at about the age of 10 or 11 than for boys at about the age 12 to 13. Before this spurt, boys and girls are similar in height. In its early phases, girls are often taller than boys. After its hour, boys are several inches taller on average than girls. This growth spurt is just one aspect of puberty, the period of rapid change during which individuals of both genders reach sexual maturity. During puberty, the gonads, that are primary sex glands, produce increased level of sex hormones, and the external sex organs assume their adult form. Boys develop facial and chest hair and their voices deepen. Girls' breasts develop and their hips widen. Both the sexes develop pubic hair. Development of bones and muscles. The bones and muscles of adolescents develop very rapidly. They reach the final body type by the end of adolescence. The muscles of girls remain softer while those of boys become hard and firm. Increase in blood pressure. During early childhood, girls have higher blood pressure than boys. But with the beginning of adolescence period, the blood pressure increases in boys and the difference increases with age. Pulse rate. Like other organs of body, heart increases in size and weight. The rate of growth of heart is higher in boys than girls. During adolescence, the pulse rate increases in both the sexes, but the increase becomes less as the individual becomes older. Digestive system. During adolescence, organs of digestive system also undergo qualitative changes. As a result of this change, an adolescent has a desire to eat more. Activation of glands. Sweat and oil glands activate in this age. Second, cognitive aspect. Along with bodily changes of adolescents undergo major intellectual changes. Many of these features of adolescent thought can be understood from the perspective of Jean Piaget's theory of intellectual development. Formal operation. Thinking abstractly at around the age of 12, most youngsters begin the final major stage of cognitive development discussed by Piaget. This stage of thinking becomes quite like adult. In fact, most adult capabilities are thought to be in place by about the age of 16. This does not mean that we learn no new facts or skills after 16, but the basic process we think do not change much beyond this age. A general feature of formal operational thought is the ability to think in terms of abstract concepts that link concrete objects or actions. The formal operational stage is characterized by the ability to manipulate abstract as well as concrete objects, events and ideas mentally. Deduction and induction. During this final stage of Piagetian development theory, hypothetical deductive reasoning, which involves the ability to generate hypotheses and to think logically about the symbols, ideas and propositions. Deduction is reasoning from abstract general principle to specific hypotheses that follow from these principles. Inductive thinking is the complementary process of observing a number of specific events or instances and inferring an abstract general principle to explain those instances. These are the two processes that can be seen in the adolescent's reasoning about nature, science, and even social problems. Reflective thinking. It's the process of evaluating or testing your own reasoning. Reflective thinking allows the formal operational person to be his or her own critique, to evaluate a process, idea or solution from the perspective of an outsider and to find errors or weak spots in it. The reflective thinker can then sharpen plans, arguments or points of view, making them more effective and more powerful. Reflective thinking can also make the adolescent a powerful experimenter, a problem solver, because it involves the ability to think through a number of possible strategies and experiments and to decide which one will lead the most information. Increase in span of attention. During adolescence, the span of attention increases. The adolescent can attend to one thing for a longer period of time. Power of concentration is increased. Development of memory and imagination. Memory is also developed and it tends to function more logically. It's better than any other stage. Adolescent possesses excessive imagination. Writers, artists, musicians, poets, philosophers and inventors are born in this period. Development of expression. The power of expression greatly develops during adolescence. The adolescents want to express their thoughts and feelings in verbal and written form. They want to take part in debates, essay writing, lectures, story and poetry contests. Ability to communicate with others increases. Third, social aspect. According to Erikson, 1968, the developmental crisis of adolescence is identity versus identity or role confusion. Identity refers to a stable sense of who one is and what one's values and ideals are. Identity confusion occurs when the individual fails to develop a coherent and enduring sense of self and has difficulty in committing roles and occupational choices. Sometimes adolescents have trouble in establishing positive identity. They may be doing poorly in school or lack models of successful adulthood with whom to identify. As a result, they may develop a negative identity. Friendship. Adolescents make friends primarily with members of their own gender, but friendship with members of other gender become increasingly important. In fact, most adolescents are the part of extensive social networks consisting of many friends and acquaintances. Girls tend to have larger networks than boys, and these networks tend to become smaller and more exclusive as adolescents grow older. Social success. Social success plays an important role and is a key aspect of social development. Adolescents begin to search for their own personal identity. The sudden change in their bodies, mental functioning, and the altered demands of society compel them to ask questions like, who am I? What have I become? Am I same person I used to be? Development of social consciousness. The boys and girls develop the social consciousness during adolescence. They try to find their place in society and want to get the social approvals. They want that their parents, friends, teachers, and neighbors should admire and approve them. Loyalty towards peer group. Adolescents are fully devoted to their friends and want to pass most of their time in their company. They agree with all of their demands, and the ideals of the peer group also become their own ideals. The groups with which the adolescents are related, they are influenced with all its activities. As per Big and Haunt, an adolescent is influenced by his group in language, moral values, eating habits, clothing habits, etc. Development of spirit of social responsibility. Adolescents fully approve social rules and traditions and try to follow them as far as possible. They also have the spirit of social service and they are ever ready for adjustment with society. Ideals of social service and altruism are formed and cherished. Social services in public gathering, fair festival becomes passion for the adolescents. He does not mind personal inconvenience in doing of such service. As per Ross, the ideals of social services are prepared during adolescence and are pronounced. The adolescent heart is permeated with the love for mankind, and he becomes curious to help in the construction of ideal society. Moral aspect. According to Kohlberg, in adolescence, individuals enter a third level known as post-conventional level and principal level of moral development. At this stage, people judge morality in terms of abstract principles and values rather in terms of existing laws and rules of society. Persons who attain at this stage often believe that certain obligations and values transcend the laws of society. The rules they follow are abstract and ethical, not concrete like the 10 Commandments, and are based on inner conscience rather than on external source of authority. At the age of 13, the highest level of attainment of true morality as the controlling force for making moral judgment now rests within the individual himself. At adolescent stage, individual begins to think in rational terms, valuing the rights of human being and the welfare of society. The controlling forces for making moral judgment are highly internalized. The decisions of individual are now based upon his conscience and the belief in universal principles of respect, justice and equality. Fifth, emotional aspect. Adolescence is an age of emotional upheavals. The adolescent is driven by the instincts, tendencies, and this influence changes from moment to moment. Heightening of emotions. Adolescence is the period of heightened emotionality. Their emotions are very intense. When an adolescent hates someone, he hates strongly, and when he falls in love, he does so passionately. Thus, emotions of adolescent are on the extreme. Heightened emotionality is evident from nail-biting, tension, conflict, and quarrel with parents, siblings, and classmates. Variation in emotional moods. Emotional moods of adolescence vary from elation to depression. 1 minute the young adolescent is up in the clouds and next he is in the depth of despair. The adolescent lives an intensely emotional life in which we can see once more the rhythm of positive and negative phases of behavior in his constant alteration between intense excitement and deep depression. Auto-eroticism, self-love. The adolescent becomes self-conscious. He loves his body. He wears costly dresses to attract the attention of others. Emotion of anger. The adolescent is made angry when he is teased, ridiculed, criticized, lectured, treated as child, or when people impose upon him and are bossy. The young adolescent experiences many frustrations when he is blocked. Instability of emotions. Emotions rise and fall as an adolescent shows fear, anxiety, love, etc. This is all related to our today's topic, adolescence and psychophysical characteristics. Hope you have enjoyed and understood. Thank you for watching.